The rise of the internal combustion engine led to a massive breakthrough in the realm of vehicles and businesses. You could honestly say that the world truly does go and run on engines of all shapes or sizes, even if you don't realize it. But with the various advancements that have come about it, some insane designs have been used. Some have worked fine, others less so. So allow us to show you 9 of the most insane engines of all time. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 9, GE90 Engine. Let's be honest here. When it comes to engines, bigger is not always better. Sometimes it's about finesse versus just making something big for the sake of showing off. The only exception to this rule is for the vehicles that need these big engines to do their jobs. Like with the GE90 engine, which is the most powerful turbofan engine in the world. And yeah, it's big. Now, you might think that this is a fairly recent creation given its size and power, but you would be wrong. Rather, it was something made all the way back in 1995 when it debuted on board a British passenger plane. What's more, it was ahead of the curve in terms of parts of its creation because it was the first fan blade engine ever to use carbon fiber to go and make said fan blades. But of course, they didn't just leave well enough alone. They had to go and improve upon the GE90's abilities, and thus, over the course of many years, they worked on making it bigger, better, and even more powerful. Fast forward to today, and their fan blades are over 4 feet in length per blade. And to be clear, each of these engines have 21 blades. They're made of a fusion of materials that makes them super strong, but 1/3 the weight of titanium. And during the test in 2002, it set a world record for exerting 127,000 pounds of thrust. Yep, that's insane. Number 8, Mazda NSUwinkle Rotary. Imagine that you're a 1950s carmaker being pitched an experimental engine. A German named Felix comes in and tries to sell you on the idea of a 3-point piston spinning around inside an oval box, burning fuel as it goes. It looks like a ball of fire in a bingo cage, or maybe a football knocking around in a washing machine. Not only does it run, but it's also incredibly balanced. We know it's hard to picture, but just roll with it, okay? The rotor itself is triangular with convex faces, and its 3 corners are called apexes. As the rotors spin within the housing, it creates 3 chambers that are responsible for the 4 phases of the power cycle: intake, compression, power, and exhaust. Each face of the rotor is always at work on one stage of the cycle. If it sounds efficient, that's because it is, sort of. Horsepower outputs are high relative to the engine displacement, but they suck fuel like whoa, because the combustion chamber is elongated. You might now think that this kind of gas guzzler wouldn't be used, but you forget, people really didn't mind it at the time. Thus, the engine was in production until 2012 in Mazda's RX sports car. See, even insane engines get a lot of use. Number 7, GE9X. Now let's head back to the skies and talk about jet engines. Because when the German forces in World War II came up with these powerful engines, they literally changed the game in all the ways that matter. Fast forward to now, and most planes and major aircraft are powered by jet engines, especially military vessels. But in terms of the biggest jet engines in the world today, that would be the GE9X. And if you can't tell, this is a big engine to have. In fact, the engine is so big, it has to be perfectly outfitted to the wings of the Boeing planes it's attached to, else cause massive problems for the plane due to its size and weight, as well as making sure the plane can actually get off the ground. Sometimes, the wings of the plane have to be reinforced to handle this insanely big and powerful engine, which, for the record, can produce over 100,000 pounds of thrust. Number 6, Eisenhower Compound. Connecticut's Eisenhower Horseless Vehicle Company was formed by John Eisenhower, a New York man who claimed to have invented the gasoline engine and had a nasty habit of getting sued by his business partners. Not the best look, to be sure. His 1904 to 1907 Compound models featured an inline 3-cylinder engine where 2 outer cylinders powered a unignited dead middle cylinder with their exhaust gases. The middle cylinder provided the engine's output. The outer cylinders were huge with 7.5-inch bores, but the inner, at 12 inches across, was larger still. Eisenhower claimed a 47% increase in fuel economy over a standard engine of similar size. He also went bankrupt in 1907, so yeah, sometimes these engines don't pan out. But hey, at least you tried, man. Number 5, Panhard Twin. Leave it to the French to design an interesting engine that seems ordinary at first glance. Famed Gaelic manufacturer Panhard, largely remembered for his eponymous suspension rod, powered its post-wars cars with a series of air-cooled aluminum block boxers. They were distinguished by unique construction. The block and the cylinder head were in one casting, torsion bar valve springs, a roller-bearing crank, hollow aluminum push rods, and exhaust pipes that doubled as engine mounts on one variant. Displacement varied from 610 cc's to 850 cc's. Output was between 42 horsepower and 60 horsepower, depending upon the model. The best part? The Panhard Twin remains the oddest engine ever to notch class wins at the 24-hour Le Mans. You can knock these kooky engines all you want, but when they deliver results, they're hard to ignore, you know? Number 4, Bugatti Veyron W16. The stats of this particular engine are the stuff of legend. The Bug's 8.0-liter, 1,000-plus horsepower W16 is the most powerful and complex production engine in history. Think about that for a second. That's how insane they went for it, that it was never bested in terms of its complexity. It has 64 valves, 4 turbochargers, and enough pavement-shredding grunt, as much as 1,106 foot-pounds at 3,000 RPM, to rattle just about anything you put in front of it. It's W-shaped, another oddity more or less, 16-cylinder layout, essentially an eccentric use of narrow-angle Volkswagen VR4s, and it has never been used before and likely never will be again outside of perhaps another Bugatti. Oh, and it came with a warranty, because given everything that this ride tried to do, can you blame it? There are times you can't help but wonder what car makers were thinking when making certain designs, and this most definitely qualifies in that category. Number 3, Knight Sleeve Valve. At the beginning of the past century, automotive frontiersman Charles Yale Knight had an epiphany. Traditional poppet valves, he reasoned, were too complicated, the attendant springs and followers too inefficient. His solution was dubbed the sleeve valve, a sliding sleeve around the pistons driven by a gear shaft which exposed intake and exhaust ports to the cylinder wall. Amazingly, it worked. Sleeve valve engines offered high volumetric efficiency, low noise, and no risk of valve float. Disadvantages were few, but included high oil consumption. Knight patented his idea in 1908, and it later appeared in everything from Mercedes-Benz's to Panhards and Peugeots. The technology fell out of favor when poppet valves became better able to cope with heat and high RPM. But that's the thing about inventions like these. They seem insane at the time because they're fighting against the grain, as it were. But in truth, they were just trying to go and prove that certain ideas don't need to be the only ones available or praised. Sure, it fell out of style, but it kept going for a while, and that's what matters here. Number 2, Commer Roots TS3 Commer Knocker. Strange name, we know, but the engine is even weirder when you figure it out. The 3.3-liter Commer TS3 was a supercharged opposed piston. Each cylinder has 2 pistons with their crowns facing each other, and there are no cylinder heads. Single crankshaft, most opposed pistons have 2, 3-cylinder, 2-stroke diesel engine. The Roots Group dreamed up this beast to power its Commer-branded trucks. The TS3 offered ingenious packaging, connecting rod rocker arms the size of a small cat, and a 270 foot-pound of torque, and more grunt than many larger diesels of the time. It's certainly something, that's for sure. Number 1, Adams Farwell. If the idea of your engine rotating behind you seems like a good one, then the Adams Farwell, hailing from Dubuque, Iowa, is your car. To be clear, it was just the cylinders and pistons rotating, because the crankshaft on these 3 and 5-cylinder engines were fixed. Arranged radially, the cylinders were air-cooled and acted as a flywheel once the engine was up and running. Drive was taken off the cylinder assembly via a short single chain, and the units were light for the time. 190 pounds for the 4.3-liter 3-cylinder and 265 pounds for the 8.0-liter 5. It wasn't the best engine ever, and in fact was only in production for 9 years because other engines had more fixed settings that made them better, more reliable, and harder to break. So, what do you think? What do you think of this look at the various engines of the world that have tried to go beyond the usual style and kind of backfired as a result? Or the enormous lengths they went to in order to power atypical machines? Which of these engines do you personally find the most insane? Which ones listed gives you the most pause in terms of what they could do or what they tried to do? Do you know of any other engines that would perfectly fit on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.